My name is Cristi DANILET. For over 20 years now, I've been a judge in Romania, specialized in criminal matters. Under the Ministry of Justice, I pledged my work as an advisor for about 2 years, and with the trust in Hayes by my peers, I was elected to be a member in Romanian Judicial Council for 6 years. About 15 years ago, I wrote a book on judicial corruption, which is a very sensitive subject in Romania. I was also an expert of Council of Europe and European Union in the Republic of Moldova, Ukraine, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. Now I'm suspended from judicial office for the reason that I posted 2 videos on TikTok during the pandemic with some aspect of my own life, my private life, and then CSM Judicial Council decided to discipline me. The appeal is ongoing on the Supreme Court. However, I'm not here to speak about my private life or my professional life, but to talk about Romanian justice system. I love my profession, I love my country too, but that's why I'm thinking it's my duty to show what is right and what is wrong in Romania regarding justice system. I just remember that I've been here before in March 2019. Me and a group of 30 magistrates, judges and prosecutors came to Brussels to discuss the situation in Romania with the representatives of the EU authorities. We were then outraged by several legislative changes that will have blocked the fight against corruption. At that time, every Friday, the magistrates protested in front of the Romanian courts of justice in many cities in my country. The civil society was on our side. I mentioned that then in Brussels that the rule of law is in danger. After a few weeks, European Parliament adopted a resolution highlighting that to the Romanian authorities the need to respect the independence of the judiciary, respecting the rule of law and democracy. Since then, new reforms have been made and new decisions have been adopted by our Constitutional Court, and new CVM reports have appeared. Romania is a young democracy. It is a country where there is no rule of law culture. For a little while we have been talking about European standards such as the separation of powers, independence of justice, non-discrimination and freedom of expression. With every reform made, individuals want more freedom and the state wants more control. During communism, a person could have been a judge or prosecutor only with the approval of the Communist Party. This explains why justice was controlled at that time by politicians. There was not a constitutional court, the supreme judges were appointed by Parliament, the prosecutors were subordinated to Minister of Justice and were obliged to attend the meetings of local and party authorities. In fact, at that time, justice was a kind of tool to impose communism. All people had to comply to the supreme leader, no one could oppose him, there was no freedom of speech. In the last years of communism, no one was allowed to travel across the border into foreign countries. The presidents and the chief of public institutions were extremely powerful. In 1989, a struggle for freedom has started, and thus the Romanian Revolution initiated against the oppressive regime of communists dictated by Ceausescu. Therefore, the army and security forces started shooting against protesters with immense casualties. Even after 30 years of criminal investigation, the trial is still pending. In the end, the dictator was removed and shot down by revolutionaries, and so the young democracy of Romania was born. Unfortunately, all judges and prosecutors from the communist era remain in office. Suddenly, those who supported the Communist Party had become defenders of human rights. Illustration of them was attempted by the Constitutional Court, say 10 years ago, that is, it was too late. The only thing successful was that every judge and prosecutors was required to declare whether or not they were former security collaborators, and to declare that they are not currently agents, informers of or intelligence collaborators. When this law was passed, 800 magistrates left suddenly the judiciary. Step by step, Romania was accepted into the major international organization. It became a member of Council of Europe, then in NATO, then member of EU. During the years, the legislation was significantly renewed and new generation of judges and prosecutors arrived. Believe me, I'm amongst the oldest of the magistrates, of the Romanian magistrates. And imagine that I'm working with colleagues who were born after the Romanian Revolution in 1989. Unfortunately, the old practices have not disappeared. The fear of negative evaluations and negative statistics make magistrates more interested in the number of cases solved than the quality of the decisions adopted. To avoid politically control on the magistracy, the Superior Council of Magistrates was created, was invented, and invested with the power from the Ministry of Justice regarding the magistrate's career. So today, only CSM recruits, promote, transfer, and discipline magistrates. Even so, the high-ranking prosecutors are appointed by politicians. So the Ministry of Justice select the General Prosecutor of Romania, the Chief Prosecutor of DNA, the National Department of Anticorruption, and of DCOT, which is a specialized unit for fighting against organized crime. So the CSM has only a consultative opinion, and the President of the state appoints those candidates to the office. Although the system was criticized by the Venice Commission 2 times, it is still unchanged. Moreover, according to the new justice laws approved last month, these so-called political chiefs can deny and change the solution adopted by any prosecutors in the country. Practically, the independence of prosecutors does not exist anymore. I consider that the prosecutors must be seen as partners in the administration of justice, as the lawyers are partners in the administration of justice. Unfortunately, the Romanian legislation allowed for many years that judges and prosecutors that were expelled from corruption and convicted by the Romanian judiciary to be admitted back as lawyers in the bar. Currently, 1 of 4 Romanian adults are involved in a criminal or civil case. Although we have a mediation law from 2006, it doesn't work. Trust invested in authorities is low. According to Transparency International, Romania is amongst the first 3 countries where corruption is widespread. However, the fight against corruption is no longer as successful as it was in 10 or 15 years ago. I used to say that for many years in Romania we had corruption, then we began to fight against corruption, and now we had the fight against anti-corruption. To be realistic, after the dismissal of Mrs. Kövesi from the position of Chief Prosecutor of DNA, the fight against corruption entered in a phase of stagnation. As in other countries, each crime must be discovered and the trial must be finalized within a certain time frame. If it is succeeded, the case is closed. In 2014, the new penal code reduced the penalties for most crimes in Romania. Likewise, the new code reduces also the period of statute of limitations. 2 recent decisions adopted by Romanian Constitutional Court and Supreme Court of Justice have found some legislative problems in this area and established new rules mandatory for all judges. So as a result, 560 corruption cases will be closed. The possibility to recover 1.2 billion euros because of the prejudice inflicted by the cases diminished considerably by the decision adopted by judiciary body. With another 600 package of cases of organized crime that will be closed, it will be totally impossible to attempt to recover more than 1 billion euros. Speaking of organized crime, you know that Romania ranks first in human trafficking in Europe. Unfortunately, poverty and lack of education, as well as the existence of large international organized crime networks, adding to a certain inability of the police and prosecutors to act, generates an enormous number of trafficking children and women. In addition to the high number of young mothers, girls under the age of 15, Romania occupies the top of the graphics of European Union, which proved the need of sexual and legal education introduced in the curriculum. During the last 3 years, a lot of judges and prosecutors were disciplined by judicial inspectorate, not for how they perform their professional duties, but for how they communicate with the press or on social media. In fact, all the leaders of magistracy involved in organizing the protest 2 or 3 years ago are being investigated. Let's have a minute to think that there is a judge, colleagues of mine, who was investigated under the pretext that he is undermining the national law, even though he applied the European Union law. Despite what I've learned in school, Constitutional Court does not recognize the supremacy of European Union law. There are 3 decisions adopted by Court of Luxembourg which mention that a Romanian judge can override the decision of the Constitutional Court that does not respect EU law, but the judges are afraid to implement them in the perspective to avoid being investigated like other colleagues. So I'm not a politician. It's not according to my status to make political remarks, but my message is the following. Given the Romanians' unfortunately past and present situation, I respectfully ask European Union not to abandon us. We have been welcomed into European Union family, and I think the family must take care of all members, including those who don't follow the rules. Our honest citizens are hardworking people devoted to their family and always trying to their best. For them, public institutions must function correctly. In matter of justice and anti-corruption, there is still a lot to be done. There are still reforms to be done. And doesn't matter what European Union authorities will decide regarding CVM and Schengen area, I think the political decision that you will adopt it will be benefit for Romanian citizens and also for European Union. And I think justice must be something crucial. Thank you so much.